Tonight's guest is Todd. Todd, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Vic.
Well, you're welcome. Thanks for coming on. Todd, please give us a brief bio on yourself.
Well, my name's Todd. I'm from Milwaukee, Wisconsin. I am 53 years old. I was an electrician out of the 494 out of Milwaukee. Right now, I'm disabled. Got hurt on the job. It's nice to meet you.
Well, it's great to meet you too. Todd, you had your encounter when you were in your early teens. Back then, did you spend much time in the woods?
Yes, actually, that was our stomping grounds. Me and my friends hung out in that area. There was many acres out there, hundreds of acres. That was a state forest and army reserve.
It's obvious you loved the woods back then, but present day, can you go into the woods without any trouble?
I do not go into woods these days. I haven't been in the woods in years, and it was multiple years. Try to stay out of them.
Yeah, after your experience, I can understand why you would, but that's okay in time. I hope you can head back into them, especially considering how much you like to spend time out there. When we spoke for the first time, you expressed an interest in undergoing hypnotherapy to relive your encounter. How sure are you that you'd like to do that?
Yeah, Vic, I was thinking about it a lot, actually, since I talked to you. I don't think, actually, I really want to do it because I think if I was in that time when I seen this creature, I'd probably have a heart attack. So I don't want to relive it again.
Well, you know what they say about opening old wounds. I hope you don't do that. Before you had your encounter, had anything happened to you that you think might have been cryptid related?
No, I seen like werewolf movies and Frankenstein movies and stuff on TV, but never in my life would I have dreamt of seeing what I seen.
Yeah, well, I can understand why you wouldn't expect to see something like that. I wish you never would have seen it.
Yeah, same here, man.
Oh, definitely. Had you heard about cryptids before you had your encounter? If so, what were your thoughts on them?
No, this happened when I was young. I never even heard about cryptids, and as kids, we heard about Frankenstein and Dracula and a werewolf, but never cryptids or anything like that.
Wow, you talk about a rude awakening. You weren't alone when you had your encounter. Who was with you when you had that experience, and what can you tell us about them?
Actually, I was with my best friend named Keith. He was a couple years younger than me. Hung out with him for many years. He was a friend I had a lot of fun with when we hung out in the woods. We were kind of like Huck and Finn. There was actually four of us that used to go out there and playing forts and stuff. And he passed away at a young age of 17, 18 over a bad relationship. So God rest his soul.
Wow, yeah, that's a shame. Are you one of those people who would rather know about Dogmen being out there, or would you rather be oblivious?
Good question. I want people to know that they're out there if they ever encounter it. I don't think they're out to kill you. Mine let me go. People need to know that they're really out there. And I thought I was crazy, really, after talking to other people. So now I'm like very happy with social media. People are coming out and talking about it. And so now I feel I really did see what I seen.
Well, social media can be a pain in the butt, but in some ways it is beneficial. I mean, after all, like you said, because of social media, now you know you're not so isolated and so alone in your experience.
Exactly.
Yeah, thank goodness for that. You described the Dogman you saw as looking like a monster. Without describing what it looked like, does that mean that you didn't see any intelligence in its eyes?
Ooh. Now, do I want to go into when I looked into its eyes, I was frozen. I don't know. I didn't wait around for it to see if it was intelligent. It scared the life out of me. I was paralyzed when I seen the thing. I locked into its eyes. They like looked through my soul, and I felt like I was there locked into this thing for like 5 minutes, which was really only probably 10, 15 seconds before I actually got my gumshoe to telling me to get out of before you die, because this thing wanted to kill me or eat me or.
Yeah, that's totally understandable. Being face to face with a dogman can make 2 seconds feel like an eternity, so I get it. After you had your encounter, no one believed you when you tried to tell them about it. How much harder did that make it for you to come to terms with it?
I told the story my whole life to pretty much everybody that I was close to. Growing up, my family right away, when I told them, you seen a dog, somebody was scaring you. And I could never believe in myself. At that time, for all those years, that I believe what I really seen. It was something out of this earth that was like the scariest thing in a movie that I seen.
Yeah, I can understand you saying that. How could anything else compare? You had your encounter in Wisconsin, like you just mentioned. Can you think of a better place to have an encounter if you have to have one?
Well, I can't think of any place to see one where would be a good place to see one. The weird thing is I'm in the city of Milwaukee, which is like 250,000 people. And to see Dogman probably be pretty rare. You wouldn't expect anything would be out there in that populated area, but it could be eating all kinds of animals because there was very many acres, national forest they made it out of. So had plenty to eat, obviously.
Well, hard as it might be to believe, they come into major metropolitan areas with much bigger populations than Milwaukee, so that's not isolated. If you've had a dogman encounter and would like to talk with me about it, whether in private or on the show, please go to dogmenencounters.com and submit a report. If you've had a Sasquatch sighting and would like to be a guest on one of my 2 Bigfoot shows, please go to mybigfootsighting.com and let me know. All right, Todd, please tell us about your encounter now. Give us every last detail that comes to mind.
Okay. So, picture October day, 1980, 81. I was probably 12, 13 years old. Fall, sunny day in the 50s. I lived on 55th and Silver Spring in Milwaukee. And across the street from my house, there is the 24th Armored Division of the Army Reserve. Back then, it was not fenced in before 9/11. So it was pretty open to the public. We used to ride around in the parking lot with our go-karts and our mini bikes and stuff like that. And we were always back there screwing around doing stuff. And then behind the Army Reserve, they had their fenced-in lots with their tanks and their Jeeps and stuff like that. And there was a creek that ran through the woods from the city. It ran all the way through there, and there was railroad tracks that came in. There was 2 sets of tracks. CN runs their trains on them. Back in the 40s, when World War II, it used to be a prison camp for, I'm not sure if it was German or Japanese prisoners. They turned it into a Nike missile site, I guess, in the Cold War. They had underground missile sites, so there must have been many levels of the site. There was wooded areas. There was areas where there were ponds. The one side of Haven Woods, there really wasn't that many woods on that side. It was pretty open, and there were a lot of trails, and it was hilly but pretty flat overall. Till the wood side, on the left side of the creek, which would have been the northwest side of the creek, there was a section of woods that went along the creek that went under a trestle going further north. So on this day, I go over to my friend Keith's house. I walk over there because my bicycle broke down. I was big into BMX bikes, and we rode on tracks and stuff. So I went over to my friend Keith's house, and it was him and his brother Craig. But when I got over to his house, he said that his brother Craig was out in the woods. There was a BMX track out in the woods that somebody built. I was never there before at this BMX track. So I had no idea there was even a BMX track out there. Because we used to ride our bikes on another course by on 51st and Village. So I go over there, and he tells me his brother's out there and with all the other guys. So we decided to walk out to the woods. You got to walk across the parking lot of the Army Reserve, and you follow the creek line. There was a dirt walkway that you could path alongside the creek that everybody walked on it, which we were out there all the time. So we walked on the creek, and on this, there was a tree that was across the creek. And granted, this creek is pretty small. It's probably only 8 feet wide, not even probably a foot deep. My buddy wanted to cross the tree to go to the other side because that's where we had to go. I said, no, I had some nice shoes on and clothes. I didn't want to take a chance of getting all wet. So I said, let's go down to the bridge and we'll cross there. So we kept walking. We walked down to the bridge, got down there, went across the bridge. So we were on the east side of the creek. As we're walking out the trail, and it was a bigger trail. It was almost like a car trail. It was wider, 8 to 10 feet. And then we got to the woods, and then it turned into a smaller trail, like 3 foot wide, just for a walking path through the woods. And granted, here it's a sunny day, 50 degrees. It was probably October. A lot of leaves were on the ground. There wasn't that many leaves on the ground at this time. So me and my friend are walking out to the woods on the trail, and we heard my friends up in front of us on the track. And as we get up to the track, nobody was there. So we thought, well, they must have went out the north end of the area. There's a bunch of ways you can get out of the woods to wherever they went. So we decided, well, we're going to walk back. So we're walking out of the woods back towards where we were coming from. And on the right of us, you could hear something walking with us. And granted, we're on a dirt trail. Okay, there's not many leaves and stuff on a dirt trail. As we're walking on a dirt trail, you could hear something crunching the leaves and sticks walking with us. And it felt like they were right there, like 10, 15 feet from us. All you could see was woods. You seen this, the trees. These trees, there's big trees, small trees, very densely populated wood area. There's nothing out there. And I yelled, I was like, who's out here? And there's dead silence. So we kept walking. And now on the left side of us, you could hear something walking with us. And we were on a trail. You could hear it in the woods crunching, like it's right there with you. It was like there was no other sounds you could hear except for the crunching of something next to you. But you can't see nothing. It's just woods. Now, like, my hair is starting to go up the back of my neck. I yell, who's out here? Who's screwing around with us? No answer. Okay. So we kept walking. We're still trying to get out of the woods. And now in front of us, you could hear something walking. It's not like we could see footsteps or nothing like that, but you could hear something walking with us, and there's nothing there. Now I'm scared. Now I'm really starting to freak out. And we stop, and you can hear still walking. You're like, all right, who's out there? Who's screwing around? And there's no answer. So we turned around, and we walked back towards to the track again. Now this thing's, whatever is out here is freaking us out. So we turn around and we're starting to walk back towards the track. Now in front of us, you can hear the exact same thing. You can hear and sense and feel there's something there crunching, walking with you. You stop walking and you still hear crunching a couple steps, and there's nothing there. So we're walking back down the trail, and now it's in front of us again. Like it's on the trail walking with us, and it feels like it's 5-10 feet from you. You stop walking and you can still hear it walking, take a couple steps, and it stopped, and there's nothing there. It's just the trail and the woods and the wind blowing, and it's like, okay, who's out here? Who's screwing with us? And now I'm really frightened. Now I'm like, oh my God, there's something out here that's tracking us or something, And I looked at my friend. I said, hey, the railroad tracks are to the left of us. Let's just go to the railroad tracks and get out of here because the tracks led up to McGovern Park. So I just turned around, and right there in front of me, within 10 feet next to a tree, was a monster, a creature. It was a giant. Its body was big, black. It was built. It was probably 7 to 10 feet tall. I locked into its face. It was like right there in front of me. And I just like went from its body up to its head, and I locked into its eyes. I froze. Like the thing paralyzed me. I couldn't move. I yelled, but nothing came out. It was like a silent yell. where I was so frightened and I turned ghost white looking at this thing, and this thing is standing there snarling at me like it wants to kill me, like it wants to eat me, And I couldn't move. I was frozen, and it felt like I was sitting there looking into its eyes. My mom told me I thought it was a mask, but this thing was real. This thing, you could see its face, its teeth. It was moving. I mean, this thing was growling, had its mouth open, and monster big wolf teeth and pointy ears and black and deep black eyes. It had black eyes. It didn't have like red eyes or yellow eyes like I see people talking about Dogmen. This thing looked like a wolf on steroids. This thing was huge, upright, standing upright, had arms like they were built. Its body was built. It had a huge chest, dog-like, but it was standing upright. And I didn't know what it was. It was a monster. I never seen anything like it in my life. And like all of a sudden it wanted to be seen. It like tracked us every direction we walked. It walked with us, but it was like invisible, which I could never explain that. And then all of a sudden it just appeared right there. So I froze. I was paralyzed. I screamed. Nothing came out. I finally got my composure, and I took off running. I was gone. I ran out of the woods. My friend was with me. I didn't even look back there. I just left him. Thought I was going to die. I feared for my life. I didn't look and talk to the dang thing to see if it was intelligent. So picture that I was a little chubby guy. I was probably 4 foot something at the time. My friend was probably almost 6 foot. He was 2 years younger than me, skinny guy, could outrun me any day. And I just left him. I ran out of the woods. I knew the closest place that I could get possible help there was a dead-end street, 55th. I lived on 55th, but it didn't go through because the creek went through there. The road didn't go through. And it started back up on a dead-end street that maybe went, I don't know, a quarter mile with some businesses on. So I knew the businesses were over there. So I ran towards there. I ran out of the woods, through a field. I never looked back. I was running for my life. And I remember running up to the building, crossing the street. I got to the street. I ran up to the building, and there was glass windows and glass doors on this building. And I ran up to it, and I tried to get in the door, and it was locked. And so I'm sitting there hammering on the glass door with my fists, like, let me in. I seen this wolf, this huge thing. I don't know, and I could see the reflection behind me. Like all of a sudden I see my friend come running up. I don't know if this thing was chasing us. And I turned around and I said, Keith, did you see that thing? And he said, no. He goes, all I seen was you. He said, you turned and you just turned ghost white. He said, your jaw dropped and you just froze. And he said, he froze looking at me. And he said, all of a sudden, boom, he said, I was gone. Honestly, I left him like, he probably didn't come running up to me until 8 to 10 seconds after I was already at that business, which is unbelievable because the guy could outrun me any day. So I was like, hey, I swear I seen that like a werewolf or something, dude. He goes, I don't know. He goes, I heard everything, but I said, let's just get out of here. Let's go. I said, I got to get to safety. I'm going home. So I ran down 55th Street, and now granted, the creek comes into the more of the city part out of the reserve. Now it's like a concrete waterway. So I ran down the concrete embankment, and at this time I ran through the creek. I didn't care. I had to get home. I was looking for safety. So I ran through the creek. Right across the street there where I ran through the creek was a flower shop. And I remember running along that fence line, and I got to Silver Spring, which Silver Spring was a 4-lane road. So it was a busy street. And I was praying to God that there was no cars coming when I'm running, because I'm running home. I ran across the street home. I got home to my house. My mom was home. I told my mom. She told me I seen a dog or somebody was screwing with me. She didn't believe me. And then like later on, my dad came home, and I was terrified. I told my dad what happened, and my dad, he's like, oh yeah, he took everything nonchalant. He said, oh, probably somebody's screwing with you. My mom was really the one that says, oh, no, there's nothing like that. There was a dog you seen. And I told her no. And then my brothers came home and they all gave me a hard time. Oh, Mr. C, you werewolf. And over the years, I was scared, frightened for a couple years after that. I was young. I had nightmares and everything else. And I still said, I swear I thought it was a werewolf, but obviously it was a dog man. And I just scares the living crap out of me. After seeing this thing, I didn't go out in the woods for at least 2 years, maybe 3, before I went back out there. I went out to that area where I seen that dog man. And the weird thing is, I could never find the place that where I seen it. I could never find that place again. Everything looked different. I can't explain it, but where I was on that trail, it was next to a big tree. And we went back years later, and there were smaller trees in there. There was no big trees, and I could never find that place where I seen that creature never again. So I did go out in those woods with my friends, and because we hung out there, and I was a teenager, and there was parties out there and stuff like that. So I was out there a lot of times, never seen anything again, but I never went back into that wooded side where I encountered that creature. So later in life, I tell all my friends know the story. And my best friend, he always told me, he knows it's true because the story never changed. I never changed. And so everybody I know close to me believes me. Everybody knows there's something out there that we don't know about. I've kind of blocked it out of my mind. I haven't thought about it for years. Later in life, in 1996, I told my wife, I just got married. I told her the story. I'm watching on TV, Channel 12 News. There were people out hunting werewolves. They seen them out in the woods. I'm like, oh my God, there's no way. And they had the sheriffs, they were out there, and they were talking about the Beast of Bray Road, which I never heard about. And I never heard of anything cryptic. I didn't know what I seen. So I thought it was possibly a werewolf, what I seen. Well, they were talking about they were hunting these werewolves that were been seen. So they were having hunting parties go out there. And the police weren't letting the people go out there because they couldn't have guns out there and it wasn't hunting season, stuff like that. So right away, I called my wife at work and I'm like, babes, I said, you wouldn't believe what's on TV. People are hunting these werewolves out in, I think it was Burlington, Wisconsin. She's like, no way. And I'm like, yeah. So I go on to the internet and I emailed the news agency and told them my story and never heard anything back. So it was kind of disappointing that I never heard anything back. Then one day I was watching Ripley's, believe it or not, it was a werewolf story on there. And they said that Wisconsin was the #1 werewolf sightings in the world. I'm like, no way. So again, I call my wife. I'm like, babes, you wouldn't believe this. It was on Ripley's, believe it or not, you know? I'm like, wow. I said, you know, maybe that thing I seen, maybe it was a werewolf, you know? So I don't know, 10 years back, there was this city worker driving over by Holy Hill, Wisconsin, just south of Hartford. This gentleman is picking up dead deer on the side of the road, and he picks it up and he throws in the back of his truck. It's dark out, and I guess he hops in his truck and he's doing the paperwork, and all of a sudden he feels his truck shake, and he's like, well, what was that? And he looks in the rearview mirror, and he sees this creature. He described it as a wolf-like bear man. They called it the bear man. He said he looks in the mirror and it grabs the deer off the truck and throws it over its shoulder and jumps into the woods. It's like gone. And he's like freaked out. And he takes off, drives down the road, and I guess he came back and he calls his dispatcher and reports it. Well, all of a sudden it's on the news. And the guy did one interview. And I guess he got about a lot of bad publicity. People were saying, oh, you're crazy. And he would never say anything again. He would never have another interview. So right away, I called my wife. I'm like, well, babes, I was like, somebody else seen a werewolf, was on the news again. I said, they called a werewolf. This woman, they were talking about this woman, Godfrey, that wrote a book about it. So right away, I'm like, you know, I'm going to email this woman and give her my story. And this is true, I'm going to tell her, hey, I seen one in Haven Woods in city of Milwaukee. So I emailed her and never heard anything back from her again, ever. So, I pretty much tell people that I know about it, but I'm not frightened anymore. I stay out of the woods. Like I said, I seen this thing during the day. It wasn't even nighttime where I couldn't figure out what I seen. Ever since then, I would never screw around with supernatural, like Ouija boards, or play stupid games like Bloody Mary or ghosts or just anything. I seen something that's not human-like or even animal-like that we were taught what it is. I seen something out of this world. Up until lately with social media, I'd say a couple months ago, my wife sent me a link to groups of these cryptids, which I never heard about. And they're talking about Bigfoot and skinwalkers and dogmen. And so, okay, and there's other people that really seen this thing too. I'm not crazy. There's obviously people coming out of the woodwork and saying, hey, telling their stories about what they've seen. So I feel better that I talk about it, but I hope I never see one again. Like I said, if I see it now, I'd probably have a heart attack and fall over and die before I could even run. Because it's the scariest thing I ever seen in my life. It's like I lived a horror movie. Like I said, I hope I never see one again.
I hope you never see one again also. When you turned around and saw it standing there, you said it was snarling at you. Did it ever reach out like it was going to try and grab you?
No, it just stood there. I couldn't even tell you if it moved. I was locked into its face, into its eyes. It went right through me. It paralyzed me. Maybe I went to a different dimension, or I don't know. I don't know what happened. I froze. It put the fear of life in me, where my human reaction was just to get out of there, just to run.
Well, sure, it's an extremely difficult experience that you just dealt with the best way you knew how. Put anyone in that situation, and yeah, it's going to be hard to really stay composed. Did you ever look at its legs? If you did it have canine-type legs or hominid-style legs?
Vic, I try to think back. I remember it being big and black and standing upright. It was very muscular. It had black, dark hair like a wolf, but was upright like a man. It might have been like crouching, but like I said, I locked into its eyes. I locked into its face. I couldn't even see its body. It was like my whole eyes, everything zoomed into this thing's face. This thing standing 10 feet from me, this like snarling, drooling monster. I could see like its lips and stuff maybe like moving because it had its mouth open. It had monstrous canine teeth like a dog, big black eyes, pointy ears. It was like something out of a book, like something I've never seen before in my lifetime, and hopefully I never see it again. This thing, it hunted us. Every direction we went, it was around us. And then all of a sudden it wanted to be seen, and it showed itself to me. It was like I froze. And it's like weird. When after years and years, I went back into that area, I could never exactly find exactly where I was at. Nothing looked the same. Even the trail looked different. It didn't look the same, which is very odd to me. I have no idea. It's unexplainable. If something like that, I was asked if, do they live in underground? It could. It really, honestly could. Because, like I said, there was a missile base there. And obviously missile bases have multi-levels. There's stories where I went out into the missile bases and there was tunnels that I knew from other people older, like my brothers, that used to go from there all the way to McGovern Park, which was probably a mile away, where it was a hill came up and they had two doors that were welded shut. Those were supposedly go out to the jail cell across the street to the military base. I do not know. I never went into those. They were welded shut. My brothers and them back then, they used to go into the underneath there, and there were jail cells and stuff like that. They backfilled it all in, filled it with water. So by the time I got old enough, it was already filled in. We did one time get into the missile site area. There was a set of doors out in the middle of nowhere. We found these doors and we got them open. And I don't know if this was after I seen the werewolf or before or whatever, the Dogman. So we were out in the woods and we popped open these doors, and down below the doors were big silver air conditioning vents. And my buddy jumped down on top of it, and he said he looked down and he could see pictures and stuff on a wall. It was like an office, but it was flooded in. So we're like, oh, it's flooded in. And he goes, well, we can't go down there. You don't know what's in the water. We had rafts at home. We were going to get our rafts and the flashlights to come back the next day. Well, by the time we made it back the next day, they had the doors welded shut, and we couldn't get in them anymore. So I don't know if it was the government or who welded them shut, but obviously it was the place that we weren't supposed to be at. Within a week, took those doors and they put in flower areas. They filled them with dirt and put flowers in them so you couldn't even know they were there. And those were actually the missile site, which possibly anything could live down there. And I don't know how big that place is underneath there.
Yeah, it does make you wonder if somehow it gained access into those tunnels and maybe it does live down there. That's a good point.
You know?
Did you ever get a chance to see if it had a tail or not?
I did not. I couldn't tell you if it had a tail or not.
Oh, that's all right. You're just doing the best you could to hold it together, so yeah, no one can fault you for that. Keith apparently never did see that Dogman, but how close was he to you when you saw it?
He had to be within 3 feet of me. And that's why I was like, how did he not see it? I mean, the thing was 10 feet from us. How did he not see the thing? He said he was locked in on me. And he said I turned ghost white. And he never seen anything like it. He said I look like a ghost. Which obviously I did. I froze. And it's like a movie. Like you've seen something and you can't move and you scream and nothing comes out. He heard all the noises. He heard everything that I heard of it walking with us. In every direction that we went, it was there. Like the thing was tracking us. Like it was tracking us like a meal. It's the only thing I could ever think about. Why was this thing surrounding us every direction? And then being invisible is like the biggest thing that I know that it's out of this world. I don't think anything could, well, I guess iguanas have that where they can go invisible towards anything nearby or something. Maybe this thing had that ability too. I don't know.
Touching on what you just said, when you told us about your encounter, it sounded to me like it seemed to disappear at times. How sure are you, though, that it did make itself invisible instead of using stealth to make it seem like that's what it did?
Yeah, it possibly had the stealth-like abilities to make itself like that, because I did not see it at all. And it was not like in the movie Predator where you see a figure, you can see kind of almost the outline. It was nothing like that. It was completely invisible. Invisible to the naked eye. You could hear it like right there with you, walking. You couldn't hear nothing else. So, it was silent, but all you could hear was the crunch of it walking next to you. And there's nothing there. It's not like you could see it even on the ground, like the ground move or anything. You couldn't see anything like that, but you could hear it. It was like right there with you, but to the naked eye, it wasn't there, but you could sense, you could feel it. Something's there watching you, and that's why I yelled out so many times, who's out there? You're scaring us, We were only, 12-year-old kids. And my friend Keith was probably 2 years younger than me, so he had to be 10.
Wow, that's awfully creepy. You said that it sounded like you could hear its footsteps about 5 feet from you as you were walking, but how far were the trees from you as you were walking?
The trees were right off the trail. I mean, maybe there was a 5-foot path in between trees, in between the woods on the trail. There was some bigger trees, smaller trees. Most of the leaves were off the trees. The sun was shining. It was probably 1, 2 o'clock in the afternoon. I just remember the leaves. I know the leaves were on the ground because you could hear the crunching of it walking. It wasn't completely invisible till it wanted to be seen, and then all of a sudden it appeared.
That's awfully strange. Really strange. Are there any werewolf movies or depictions of dogmen that you've seen that represent what you saw that day?
Honestly, I thought American Werewolf in London looked the closest to what I've seen, but it had a longer snout, more like a wolf, pointy ears. And that's why I always thought maybe I thought it was a werewolf. Like movies, werewolves only come out at night or whatever. This thing was during the afternoon. This was daylight. This thing popped out. I never heard of anybody else ever seeing anything like that out there, which makes me wonder how many people really did see that and never came forward.
You said you never did hear of anyone seeing anything like that, but before you had that experience, had you heard about anything strange in general happening across the road in that area?
No, I guess I was younger, so I never really followed the news or heard my parents talking anything about it. I found over the years talking about the army base was a prison and stuff like that. But as far as ever hearing about anything missing, at the time I was probably more interested in hanging out with my friends and doing stuff out in the woods and riding bikes and stuff like that. So I didn't follow the news or anything. I mean, I seen plenty of deer out in those woods and even out in the Haven Woods in the open areas, rabbits and stuff. So if the thing's eating animals, there's plenty of stuff to eat. Obviously, it doesn't eat humans because this thing could have killed me and instantly. It let me and my friend go. You hear about other people now through social media, through these groups, about people seeing dogmen. So now I know I'm not crazy.
That's right, you're not crazy. And at one point you mentioned that it acted like you were on the menu when it was doing what it was doing, but if you would have been on the menu like you just touched on, it would have killed you and had you for lunch or dinner. So it's good that you understand now that that's not what was going on there.
I feel maybe these things might be more intelligent because they know not to kill humans or don't want to kill humans, because then they'd probably be more known and they probably would think what happened to this kid, and they probably would have dug into it more. I never heard of people even talking about it till I was older and seen it on the news.
Yeah, they're awfully smart. Don't ever underestimate that. The first time we spoke, you described what you saw as being a werewolf. Do you think that's what it was still, or do you think it was actually a dogman?
I have no idea. It was a creature. A lot of people say, it was a Bigfoot or it was a skinwalker that can turn itself into an animal. Or I've been looking into mythology because now that I'm talking about it again, my interest has peaked on what did I see, and more people are coming and listening to the stories. People replying to my story. I have no idea what it was. I mean, I have to look into it more. Like they say, werewolves are men that turn into werewolves. That mythology. I'm not sure what a dogman is. It possibly could have been a dogman because it was more like a giant wolf on steroids that was upright like a man. That I didn't see it move. I didn't see it like walk away or run. It just stood there and it stared at me and growled at me like it wanted to eat me. I wasn't going to have anything to do with that. I ran for my life.
Well, I don't want to discount how much credit you deserve for holding it together the way you have. I mean, you have had a productive life after having such a terrifying experience. So, yeah, you deserve a lot of credit for that.
No, I had a good life. I always thank God. I thought after that obviously my life meant something and I was going to do something big in my life. And I actually have. I got to raise my kids and teach them the right thing in life. I mean, I told them, my kids, about the story, and they probably think I'm crazy. they laugh at me. I don't know. My son, he believes in a lot of stuff. He's more into ghosts and stuff like that. He's 25 now. He says he sees ghosts here and there, but he never seen anything like I've seen, like the Dogman or werewolf or Bigfoot. I don't know what it was, but all I know, it was the scariest thing I ever seen in my life. Hopefully I'll never see anything like that again.
Well, I hope so too. And if your son doesn't believe you, if he does think you're crazy, then yeah, that's a him problem, not a you problem. And speaking of that, you told us about all the flack you got when you tried to tell people about your encounter. Was being treated that way almost as difficult to deal with as the encounter itself?
Yeah, it made me doubt myself what I seen. It made me think, well, really, maybe you did, somebody was out there screwing with you, because that was part of the military base. Could have been some military guys trying to scare us, because really we weren't supposed to be in that area, but it wasn't fenced off back then. And that crossed my mind too, because all the people saying, my parents and my brothers, oh, you just seen people. It crossed my mind, but I could never explain the invisibility factor of it tracking us and being every direction, like it went around us. I knew it was something else beyond somebody trying to scare you. Unless the government has some invisible cloaking thing, which they probably do nowadays. This thing was real. Like I said, it wasn't not somebody in a mask. It was too real. Like it growled, its mouth moved, it froze me. It looked me into my eyes. It was a creature. It wasn't something standing or fake, like a clay model or something. This thing was real breathing creature.
No, I believe you, Todd. Your family might not believe you, the people that you shared your experience with might not believe you, but I do believe you.
Thanks, Vic.
Oh, you're welcome. You are welcome. You had nightmares for years about what happened that day. Do you still have occasional nightmares about it, or have they stopped?
They stopped for years. I didn't have any nightmares. Now I have a CCW, so I have a gun. I do carry a gun. I sleep with a gun every night. Just lately, over the last couple of months, where I've seen these groups and read stuff, it has came to my mind again, where I've been thinking about it a lot. I had one nightmare. It was probably a couple of weeks ago, and this creature, it was like it was the exact same big black wolf, and it let me go. In my dream, it opened up a door and let me go. I woke up. I'm like, wow. I said, this creature let me go again in my life. In my dreams, I feel that it wasn't there to hurt me or hunt me, because it was just there to scare me. Or that's why I think it was there to scare me. And I thought maybe it was something with the military. I mean, because where we were at, we were on grounds that we weren't supposed to be in. Let's just say that.
Well, I've got serious doubts about the military having the means to do that, but I guess anything is possible, so you never know.
Yeah, I don't know. It was undescribable. I mean, it was something out of this world that's unexplainable. That's like Ripley's Believe It or Not,
Yeah, that's a good way to sum it up. Well, it's about time for us to get out of here, Todd, but before we do you have any closing comments you'd like to share?
Well, I like to just say that if anybody else has seen it, I've seen it in Wisconsin, and all the other sightings were not near where I've seen it. I mean, they were within 30, 35 miles of reports of seeing werewolf. They say werewolves, so I'll say Dogman. I would like to know if anybody else would come out and say that they've seen this thing out there. I was scared to tell the public for years of the backlash that people give, but I don't care anymore. I'm 53 years old, going to be 54. I don't care what people think about me. I seen what I seen. I don't know if I feel lucky, because not too many people have seen these things and I lived through it. This thing didn't attack me. So it was there for a reason. I don't know what the reason was. Maybe to live my life better and do better things in my life, or my life means something. So I live every day as it's my last day. Enjoy life while you can.
That's a really good way to live. And if anyone listening has had an experience with a dogman or dogmen in that part of Wisconsin, then please say so in the comments for tonight's show, and that way Todd's going to be able to see it, and I'm sure he's probably going to respond to you. But having said that, Todd, I can't thank you enough for coming on and sharing that experience with us. I really appreciate it.
No, thank you, Vic. I really appreciate your time too.
Well, you're welcome. Thanks again so much. Have a great night.